Lord. Okay.
So, hello, girls, guys, and MVs. Welcome to the panel, Witches and Bitches. There's 4 of us here today, except one of us is not here. So, Srebrenka, please say something so we know everybody can hear you.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Awesome.
Yes.
So, we're running about an hour for today, and we're also going to be taking some questions. So if you're at the Discord Futuricon, it's Futuricon 1. Join us and send us your questions, and if we had the time, we're going to check out what you want us to talk about. So if I may, I'm going to start introducing the gals. Let's start with Srebrenka.
Why not?
So you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I introduce myself or do you introduce me?
Okay. How about you try?
Okay. So I'm Srebrenka Peregrin. I'm a storyteller. I'm also a writer and an English teacher occasionally. I really love folk and fairy tales. That's kind of my passion. And with a friend, I've just written a book about strong female characters in fairy tales across the world. So
Okay.
witches definitely come in a lot.
So if you had to choose, would you say you were a witch or a bitch?
Oh, witch, definitely.
So it's 1 for witches so far. Okay, so you pick who goes next.
Oh, okay, Antonija.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Antonija Mežnarić, and I have no idea which camera I need to... Oh, okay, that one. Okay, so I'm a writer, reader, also a teacher. Usually a cosplayer, but unfortunately we didn't really have time to prepare a cosplay for this year, so I'm, well, more casual. Srebrenka had awesome introduction, and I have no idea what to say about myself, but I'm probably also more on a witch scale, but that is really depending on who you ask. There are probably people who would tell that I'm a bitch. So.
Okay, so it's a 2.5. Okay,
and so Mojca.
Okay, last one to go. My name is Mojca. I'm a librarian, and I don't really have qualifications to talk about being a witch, I guess. No, I'm just an aficionado. I like history. I like fairy tales and folklore, and I like just considering how they affect our current life and how they used to affect the past. So I'm just gonna be, I guess I'm gonna be talking about witchcraft from that historical kind of aspect and also the current aspect.
okay, awesome. So you're a witch.
I'm still learning how to be a bitch. I should learn how to be a bitch. You cannot survive without being a bitch in this world. So yeah, for now I'm just a witch.
So I'm gonna count 3 for the witches. So I'm gonna have to be the bitch. I'm really sorry. My name is Vesna. I'm a writer, and I'm gonna be your moderator today. I'm also the person who has the Discord access. So if you're asking questions in the Discord Futuricon 1, you're talking to me. Hi. So let's start with a simple question. What is a witch? It's a question for the 3 of you.
You can start.
I mean,
Historically speaking.
Yeah, it depends on what we're dealing with here. So are we dealing with a witch as a monster from a made-up world, or are we dealing with witches as in people who are historically burned as witches, or are we dealing with witches today who practice Wicca? But I guess in a broad spectrum, we could say that a witch is a person, a woman of any age who in some way, oh God.
Is it
I'm having
a
a brain
power
fart.
thing or a knowledge thing?
in some way defies the societal conventions of the current society.
So that's like really, really broad.
Yeah, I guess that's the broadest
Okay.
aspect I can think of.
Srebrenka, would you add like in literature or in fairy tales? What's the
Sure.
witch?
It's definitely a very powerful woman, which is a powerful woman and most often connected with magic. So either good or bad, most often bad magic, I guess. And also two of the things that I really, really love in the in my life, which is words, like magic words and incantations, and like brewing potions and cooking and I don't know, food.
Yeah. They're not hungry. They know how to prepare their stuff.
Their stuff being.
That's why everyone are afraid of them. Yeah, for me, a witch is, well, a powerful woman, really. We can go into broader definitions, as my colleagues said, but for me, it starts and begins with a power, and mostly it's not defined, a power that was not defined by men, which is why they're usually, why men are usually intimidated by a witch, or which is why it can be used as a sort of derogatory term for women. Yeah.
So I guess independence really comes in a lot when talking about witches.
Yeah.
Okay, so is independence or the potions what got interested the three of you in witches?
I think, well, I never really thought about it, but I read once on the internet that one of the reasons why girls are so interested in witches is because in tales they're usually women who are the only women who have a real, actual power. And you can be either a damsel or, I don't know, a villain, but then you can be a witch, and you don't need, I don't know, some knight to save you, or a prince, or whatever. And I think about that post a lot of time, and I think that was kind of a thing for me, because I really like power in stories, and especially when that's sort of a power empowers women.
I really love the idea of a woman being all alone in a little house in the woods. Nobody's bothering you. Nobody's telling you what to do. You're just chilling there with your animal familiars. And that just sounds like heaven. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. You don't need to shave.
Pets, you know, witches come with pets.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Actually, for me, it was, I guess, a thing of just a little bit similar to what Antonija said. So, you know, you listen to stories and you try to identify with somebody from the story, and you figure out pretty quick, I'm not a princess type. So in that case, I guess I'm a witch type. And I know girls who wanted to be little princesses when they were small. And for me, it was always, I wanted to be a witch. And I even knew where I wanted to live. It was on Saturn. So that was kind of my thing.
Saturn?
Saturn, yeah.
Like the planet.
The planet.
Yeah.
You would have had an awesome view.
A little bit more removed than the forest.
So since we identify so easily with witches, what is it that, what does it make you feel like when in a narrative, especially in pop culture, we see witches so often portrayed as the bad people? The villains of the stories. So if you're a witch, you get the house dumped down on you, don't you? And you get cooked in your own stew. Or, how do you feel about that?
Well, the most interesting ones usually had to bite the bullet. But, well, that's really a hard question, because there are lots of diverse stories, and the more we came to the more modern setup, there's not so much the typical villain eating children, which is, although, of course, there were a lot of type of tales with them, especially in the 17th century. And there were a recent movie basically based just on that one stereotypical witch portrayal of the one, that murders baby to have beauty and youth. And recently Hansel and Gretel also got a new version movie. So there's also that the whole aspect, although it's not just the witch that does the killing, but also we had a mother who had to kill and eat her old children to get the power. So yeah, there's a lot of that in the old stories, and I always found it interesting, because womanhood is something that is very closely, usually, it's the way that you defined, or the society defines the woman. So you have these stories about women who literally kills and eats kids as a sort of cautionary tale, and it's the ultimate monster and dehumanization. Like, be aware of these old ladies that live in the cottages alone without men. They will eat you. But that's not the only type of stories there are, and the more recent books and stories are usually the ones that goes with, we had this whole twist when villains became more interesting than protagonists. So, the most famous example that just came to my mind is Evil Queen, Regina from Once Upon a Time. Yeah. That is definitely, she started out as a villain, but she was so interesting to people that it was just impossible to keep her that way, and they had to keep her in the story. They gave her redemption. So there's definitely a need to sympathize more with villains, because we understand them easily. In the way that it's hard with protagonists. But it's a loaded question, because where to start? And I feel like I answered none of this. So, Mojca.
I think Srebrenka
I can just quickly go back to the earlier versions of witches in folk and fairy tales. I'd also like to speak a little bit about myths, but maybe not right now. So what came to my mind was a recent article I read about how fairy tales were very feminist, not in the sense of empowerment as much as in the sense of warning women, so what could happen. So if you were a witch, beware, this is how you may end up if you are not careful. But there is also another moment that actually, I've only just become aware of it very recently, but I think somewhere, my child self had this idea as well, that witches only really die when they're old.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so even if they do, have, this, if in stories they don't have a happy end, at least it's an ending, well into their old age. Whereas the other characters in stories, you don't really know if they'll manage that.
No, if they're the mother of the princess, you know what's going to happen to them.
Especially mother.
Yeah, so it's better to be a witch than a mother to a princess.
Yeah, by far.
Fridge is big. You can fit them all.
If I could share one of the first questions from the Discord, it's a nice one for the start of the panel. Could you name the favorite witch character for you personally from anything?
Yes.
Thanks, Mihaela.
Oh my God, I'm going to kill you.
Okay, so I can start if you guys need a moment.
Sure.
So
Sure.
my favorite witch. My favorite witch is Samantha from The Love Witch. It's a movie from 2016, and it's a movie that's really dear to my heart. But it's maybe it's not for everyone, and maybe it's hard to watch and hard to understand on some level, because it deals with complex subjects of femininity and feminism and sexuality, but I think it deals with them really, really well. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with a well, nostalgic actually answer, because that's what came to my mind when I was a kid. Well, I wanted to be like Sabrina, so you know, it was really important because she just woke up one day and learned, oh my God, I have powers, and she had, and she was awesome. And I really don't remember a lot of the old TV show, except from, of course, the talking cat. But I knew that I wanted to, just like her, wake up in the morning and like levitate up to my bed and move things with my mind, and just so, yeah, it's nostalgia, definitely.
Can I have two answers, please?
As many as you'd like.
Okay, so I would definitely go as for my longest favorite witch, that must be Granny Weatherwax, because I think I read about her for the first time when I was 15 or 16, and she was an immediate love. So I really, really loved Pratchett's idea of this like old, thin, wicked but really kind-hearted witch that is Granny Weatherwax, with all of her wisdom and ideas about life. So she's definitely my favorite for the longest time. But lately, I've also started to really enjoy the Greek witches, you know, like Circe or Medea, because they get away with it. And I'm really happy about that. So finally, I found, that's what I wanted to mention. So finally, I found some witches that have a happy end, you know, like, they drove into the sky in chariots and lived happily ever after, probably.
Yeah. One of the reasons why we talk about this, having this panel, was well, after watching The Witch, but also Suspiria, a new version of Suspiria, where with that awesome moment, I don't want to spoil it a lot, but there's like that goddess moment, and I was like, yeah, I understand that. It doesn't matter who she killed in this moment and how many blood was spilled, but I wanted that. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the private one. It's Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, the Wicked version from the musical. It's a smaller one as a favorite witch. Okay.
Can I make a little digression?
Sure.
So, Srebrenica mentioned the antique myths, and you mentioned Elphaba, so I just want to use this moment to say that I have a feeling that witches were seen differently throughout the ages. So, in the antique times, we had good witches and bad witches. So you had Circe, she, okay, turned men into pigs, I guess she's a bad witch. But her mother, she was a good witch. Hecate, I think it was, her mother was Hecate. So, you know, it depended. Then, by the time we got to the Middle Ages, all witches were bad. Malleus Maleficarum was published, and all witches were bad for centuries. And it wasn't until The Wizard of Oz was written, actually, that we again had a good witch and a bad witch. So this was the first moment, I think, that we had this duality back again. It was in 1900. And ever since then, we've had this kind of resurgence of good witches, even though you can still feel the witch as a bitch,
Yeah.
thing from the Middle Ages. That's it. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. I had a kind of weird question, but I really loved the idea when Frozen first came out with Elsa. What happened was you had a character who, if I understood correctly, had to be the bad guy, the bad person, the ultimate villain, who turned out to be a good person in the end, one of the most famous Disney characters of all time, basically.
It was a marketing thing, more or less.
Sure. Okay. So
because they wrote they wrote a too good song for her,
and it's
and
one
they
of
were
the
like,
songs ever.
but we can't have her be a villain now.
Yeah. I heard that they changed it like in the last
that's what I
second.
heard.
After,
So she was
Let
supposed
It
to
Go, which is
Yeah.
also very interesting. If it's true, they wrote Let It Go, which is a really empowering song of a girl, young woman, who had to suppress her powers for a very long time, and finally she decides to not to do that anymore and just be free and live alone in her cottage. And they wrote that song with the idea that she will still be a villain by the end. So it really shows this sort of, fear, I guess. I don't know if we watch it if we read it from a feminist sort of view, that a fear towards empowered women and girls especially.
I love the story of Elsa because at the end of the movie, the first one, of course, she has her magical powers and she's out of the closet with them, and she is both the queen of the land.
And she's not punished for her powers.
She's not punished for her powers, and she gets to be the queen. Do you have any comments on that possibly single example of a woman who has both the worldly powers and the magical powers, and gets to keep them and is a hero to generations upon generations of girls?
If you mean on Elsa?
Yes.
Yeah, but they kind of
I know.
The sequel kind of
yeah.
negated. So they were, at some point they were like, she can't be queen. Oh, oopsie.
Yeah.
Oh, so I don't know if you can hear that, but yeah.
We're having heavy
really
thunderstorms here right now.
Oh, wow.
It really sets the mood here.
I have only the sun and the birds singing.
So what happened with, I'm really sorry to have to drag this out of the coffin, but what happened with Game of Thrones, with Daenerys?
Well, I mean,
The TV show.
she's not like the witch of that show, but we can mention her in a Woman with a Power who had to be destroyed in the end because she was, I don't know, they gave her too much power and they figured out the male characters, I guess, kind of fell flat. But it's really, I don't know, I always, I started noticing that every time when you have unapologetically ambitious woman, she has to be evil, and her ambition needs to be shown as evil in media. And for a long time, she wasn't. She was never ashamed of her power. She's actually only a female character in the series that has the hard power, not soft. And in the end, they really had to destroy that whole idea in the last 3 episodes. But there is another witch type of character in A Song of Ice and Fire that also had a really bad writing. That will be Melisandre.
She is called the Red Witch, right?
Red Witch, yeah. She's also, I mean, in the books for the long time, we viewed her only from the perspective of other characters, and you always got that idea that she's this powerful woman with magic, and because of that she was like a corruptive influence on a just king, because Stannis is so just and like
proper.
So and
The
she's
grammar
the
Nazi
only
too,
what.
and the grammar Nazi as well.
Yeah, and the grammar Nazi, yeah. He would be a perfect king only if there wasn't that red witch that goes and she's like put a spell on him and stuff like that. And it was only in the last novel that we got her point of view, and you see, oh, she really has a power, and she cultivated very deliberately this sort of image that she's way more scarier and heartless, so men will leave her alone, because especially in that sort of universe where there's a really harsh reality to be a female character in that world, so you kind of understand why she went all in, like to make sure that men are just too afraid of her to try to do anything to her. I mean, she was literally a child slave, and she had to go to slavery, and she never wanted to be that powerless again. So she did everything in her power to not to get in that position again. And what did we get in TV show? Well, you know, I really liked the actress, but they were always constantly sexualizing her, and she was never that sexualized in novels. Yes, it was noticed that she's extremely beautiful, but in the show they translated that into need to show her boobs like all the time, and even in scenes when it wasn't really necessary. Like the stuff they wrote with John was really, I don't know, as a book reader, that was really cringy. So, you know, the way they translated that in the TV show really shows how the TV show creators view, in the end, a woman and a woman with power. And especially
Can I interrupt for just a very slight second? No, because I was just thinking how often this happens, that witches are used as a way of men to sexualize women. I mean, if you, because witches have been shown, you know, in art for centuries, and I guess I'm not sure if slowly is or quickly, but you know, there has been this sexualization of the image of the witch. You know, from some old hag with perhaps a broom or something, you have the Walpurgisnacht, which is just like a bunch of naked women flying around in all directions, you know, just so you can get a better view of them. Yeah. So I guess it's not just Game of Thrones, it's a lot of men. As Hannah Gadsby, if you've seen her last show, Douglas says, you know, it's a decision. It's a decision that they made how to portray women. So,
yeah, that reminds me of evil, sexy makeover trope. When a character that is like good or like morally good, and then they decide to, I don't know, switch sides, and they for TV shows. So they do a whole makeover. They give new makeup, new clothes,
and also the inevitable zipper malfunction.
It's suddenly fitted, and it's very much sexualized than it usually that character used to be shown. I mean, even Sabrina in the new TV show had the evil, sexy makeover. Like, while she's a good witch, she's like, you know, button up, but you can't have it.
Sure. I just want to drop some more history on you. Okay, so why witches are naked, why witches are sexy? So, I mean, basically, we have everything we can blame everything on Maleus Maleficarum, where the author wrote that the reason why witches are mostly women is because to become a witch, you have to be in a sexual relationship with the devil. And then you become a witch. And you have to sleep with him, you have to kiss his ass every time you see him, literally, etc. So there was a strong sexual component to that. And I think that's why witches are very often shown as naked or like really sexualized in the media. I think that's the main reason. And well, and from a patriarchal perspective, also women who enjoy their sexuality are demonized and vilified. So that's also like one of the reasons why witches are so terrible, because they dare to be sexual.
I almost forgot. You know, the story of Lilith, obviously.
Yes.
Is, I guess that's one of the places where it starts, right? Like all the way back in Eden, where Adam had his first wife who wanted to be on top, which he was not really happy with, so she got banished to give birth to the demons and legions of, I don't know, spirits and ghosts and whatnot, some of which would then go and torture poor men in their sleep and cause night pollutions or whatnot, until obviously she met, was it Satan himself? And then they lived happily ever after. In some versions, not sure if in all of them, but at least in one.
There was a question, just going back to the worldly power. There was a question about Daenerys and the idea of absolute or very powerful power. Is your opinion that it's portrayed differently in female characters, like in Daenerys, or do you think that the idea that power corrupts is like a universal thing?
Nobody really let any tears when John executed a bunch of men, including a child. But it was a problem when Dany executed 2 guys, so bigoted guys at that. So I guess even when you have the same, similar portrayal, people interpret it in different ways. So it's really about the eye of the beholder, I guess.
There was also a question about the movie The Craft. So the 1990s movie. It's only recently been made available through Netflix. Would you like to comment on The Craft as one of the starts for a generation or many generations with the witches in pop culture?
Yeah, and also an interesting thing is that there's a remake of The Craft happening right now, which, yeah, I think it's out in a couple of months. But anyway, I think the 90s were kind of a moment for witches. I think you can really pinpoint the moments in history in which women feel disenfranchised and powerless, and these are the moments where witches are really strong in media. I think that's why we're having a resurgence right now. And in the 90s, there was the third wave happening, and the girl power was everywhere, and I think that's why. So we had practical magic, we had The Craft, we had, well, Witches of Eastwick was like late 80s, but you can count them as 90s.
No, please include them. I almost forgot about them.
Which one?
Witches of Eastwick. So yeah, what was the question? The Craft.
Yep.
The Craft was. I don't know if you mentioned it now or if we talked about it earlier. Yeah, earlier we talked about how teenage girls they want to feel connected to each other, and The Craft is something that really speaks to that, on that level, to teenage girls and young women, which I think is really powerful, a real powerful idea that we're stronger together. Though they couldn't achieve anything until they got together, which is kind of negated by the end of the movie, when the power corrupts them so badly, and only the good witch keeps her powers, and the bad witches lose their powers. But yeah, because they were bitches, I guess.
Oh, what happened to
I think we lost Srebrenka.
She's probably getting back in a second or so.
But I was reading that text about The Craft, about that exactly. Why was it so popular in America? It was because of that idea of connection with each other that even the movie ending couldn't destroy. This is which is why it was so popular, in schools to band together and be together. Yeah.
There was another story, another question, about witches and bitches and the correlation in fiction you and we write. So when you're writing a witch character, for example, does she have to be a bitch, or is she not allowed to be a bitch, or?
Well, I'm not much of a writer. I'm trying to remember if I
you had
any.
the fairies.
Yeah, I think I had a witch character, and she was she was kind of a typical witch, so.
Well, she was a
Does it
bitch.
mean- yeah.
Yes, she was a bitch.
Um,
But no,
there's-
you're a writer, like an actual one, so you take over.
I guess there's something freeing, a little background. I grew up in a very traditional Catholic family, and I'm really, really like shy and pristina.
Demure.
Polite. I'm very polite, and I always need to say I'm sorry, even if I did nothing wrong. So for me, when I see a woman that doesn't need to do any of that, it's kind of a freeing, really. And I don't really need. It doesn't matter if she's evil or not, or if she's just unapologetic in her actions. I just really like that a moment of simply not saying I'm sorry, you know.
Sremenka, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Can you
So,
hear me?
Yeah, sure. The
Yeah,
question
sorry,
was.
I just, my internet, I guess,
No, it's
Yeah,
fine.
died
It's fine. You're
for a
back.
while.
The question was when we and you write witch characters, like witch, not whatever, how often are they bitches? And is it a factor for you? And I would also like you to tell us just a tiny bit more about your book coming out, the Bajkarice. Do you have any witch characters? Are they bitches?
Yeah, we have witch characters, but since it's a very traditional type of a book, so with traditional folk and fairy tales from around the world, most witches are not very nice witches. There's like this, you even have in Kiribati, for example, you have Nei Atutababa, who is not a very nice witch, more like the Hansel and Gretel type. But there are lots of old, wise women. We really try to, find these characters as well. So they occasionally appear, for example, in a Scottish tale. There's an old and, very beloved old woman, a wise woman to whom the protagonist comes and asks for help. So, we don't shy away from witches in this old traditional sense, because as storytellers, we're also aware that the witch, as she was for such a very long time in our history, is an archetype. And, you can't just kind of wipe out all these centuries of building an archetype. It will take a longer time for us to start and see the witch in a different way. However, because, as I said, it's about strong women, and we tell a lot of stories about strong women and also about witches. There is, I think, that one story that we didn't include, and I'm a little bit sorry about that, but it may come in a later book, I hope, sometime. And this is Baba Yaga. And I think she is like the quintessence of being a witch and a bitch
And
at the
also,
same
like,
time.
very, very popular
so-
all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe she's this kind of a seed of the new archetype, where somebody can be a witch, and Baba Yaga practically never gets hurt in the stories. She sometimes helps, sometimes she doesn't help, but it doesn't matter really, because she's her own woman living in that little cottage of hers on chicken legs. And she's one of those powerful, really powerful witches, because she has the day and night and even the dawn, as her own riders who come to her and that she sends out. And there is another type of I am not sure if she's a witch, but I really like this character in some folk tales that appears, especially in Croatian ones. And she's a bitch, but in a very weird sense, in the sense that her sons or grandsons are dog heads. So they're these men with the heads of dogs. You never find out what she looks like, actually. But she keeps house for them, and she will prepare human meat for them. And again, sometimes she will get hurt, but sometimes she will not. She will just, be there, and then the dog heads will kind of get hurt, and she'll just continue living in her little cottage, and nobody will know what exactly happened to her. Did that answer the... Sorry, or did I get lost in all the fairy tales all at once?
I was just listening to
It's
you.
hard,
I'm
it's
sorry.
it's hard not to get lost.
Are there any other famous witch or bitch characters in Croatian or Slavic folklore that you can think of? Maybe some we haven't heard of?
Oh, it's Black Queen of Medvedgrad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you tell us
she comes to
something
mind.
about her?
Well, she had to make a deal with the devil to keep the Turks at bay. She failed in the end.
Oh, that's
To,
sorry.
outsmart him, if I remember the tale correctly.
Well, there are several versions. In most of them, she either turns into a snake or vanishes, and her entire loot or all of her gold and treasure is still buried somewhere around Zagreb, so you can try and find it if you are here in vicinity.
Oh, do we need to take that metal detector around Zagreb?
It made me think of the Snaha Goja.
Oh, yeah.
Could somebody
like her.
translate it quickly for me, please?
Oh my God.
The daughter-in-law.
The
who's
snake
also...
daughter-in-law.
Okay. Is she a witch, or is she just a snake person who's also female?
It says she's a cursed soul, really. So not sure if that would count as a witch. But there is Baba Poludnica.
There's a.
And I
know there's
really
a
don't know
novel.
how to translate that one.
No. There's a novel.
Well, in The Witcher,
Poludnica.
they translated it as Noon Wraith, Poludnica.
Oh,
Cool.
okay.
So who is she? What does she do?
Well, from what I've heard, maybe there's multiple versions, but from what I know, she's like a spirit who haunts really hot fields in the summer and will cause you to
Go
faint
insane.
and go insane because, I don't know, it's really hot.
Yeah. And she appears also in Ivana Brlić-Mažuranic's work, like the snake daughter-in-law, as a type of a witch. But how about Mokosh? How about...
Where do we draw the line between gods and witches? It's hard to tell.
It's, well, especially when you have different sort of interpretations and versions of a story, like with snake daughter-in-law. Like, it's really a thin ice, because I would definitely call her a witch because of the way that she was, written in the story.
But she's never called a witch in the story.
No.
No, that's why it's a funny question, actually.
Well, she was a bitch, definitely.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's because she was a snake. Funny story, although this will be funny only to Croatians because of the wordplay. So that type of story, you need to read it
When you're young?
in elementary school, and when the teachers examine you, you need to answer the questions so they can see you actually read it. So one of the questions was, what is actually daughter-in-law? And I wrote the word guja, which is a version of Croatian word that means snake. And there was a colleague, that other student who was sitting near me, and they asked me, they tried to write it,
Copy.
I see where this is going.
and they were like, shh, so what was she? And I whispered back, guja, and they wrote kuja, which is a Croatian word for bitch. So
This is super appropriate. That's amazing.
It was not incorrect.
yeah, definitely.
So we're...
Just to jump in, we could mention strigas also, which are
Please
not
do.
necessarily witches, but there are versions that show them as witches or as vampires, which is a whole, I mean, they're usually their own type of creature from Eastern folk tales, but there are definitely versions that show them as witches, especially when they're shown as, I don't know, popular
Female.
media. Yeah.
I'm interested, maybe Srebrenka, you know if in the correlation, if there is one between striga and strega in Italian, which is a witch, if I understand
Yeah,
correctly?
I mean, well, I mean, at least etymologically, that's they're so close. Now, I suppose it should go even further back to Italian, but I would need to check this one first, to be honest. But what I remembered about the story that you just said, you know, the snake daughter-in-law, what I remembered was that it was actually her, although she kind of acts as a witch, right? So she ensnares the young lad in the woods, and then you know, has all of these strange appetites that need to be kind of filled. But the interesting thing is that she calls her mother-in-law a witch. Because
Old witch, right?
because of
Vještica stara,
the kindling from which the domaći, so these little kind of fire demons, I guess.
Fire sprites.
What we call them?
I think
Like
it's
benevolent
sprites.
fire beings
Yeah.
emerge, right?
Yeah.
And then the old woman is actually called a witch. So we could also argue that, you know, who is the real witch in that story?
That's the good witch, bad witch kind of a situation.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
reverse.
Because actually that old mother is, I mean, shown as being wise in contrast to her foolish son who marries the snake. So that definitely that has that element of a wise old woman, which.
So, yep.
I just wanted to use this moment to go back to the etymology of striga and strega, and just reminded me that I love the etymology of the Croatian word witch, which is vještica, and it comes from the old Slavic word vješt, which means to be crafty and capable, skillful, which I think is really amazing and like not a negative word at all. But
it's actually connected to my next question, which was in history with the burning of the witches. How often do you think was it a healing woman?
Yeah, like
who got,
most of the time.
and do you think it's maybe connected in the Dark Ages with the separation of the church healing the soul and nobody got to heal the body, or?
Yeah, okay, now I can talk about this for a long time, but okay, I'll control myself. So, well, a lot of the women who were burned were healers and midwives, but of course they could burn anyone who they disagreed with. They just invented the reason. If the woman had a lot of land and the church wanted some land, just burn her and take the land. Why not? But yeah, in a lot of cases, they were healers and midwives. And a little digression there, I think that's also why witches are maybe portrayed as killing or eating children. Because as far as men knew, men weren't involved in, you know, the birthing process. You had midwives for that. And so as far as men knew, the women just go into a room, they shut the doors, and maybe sometimes the child survives, sometimes it doesn't.
Ouch.
And I think that's maybe they blamed the midwife if the child died, and they just said, oh, she probably killed him to use them for the baby for rituals. I think that was a connection there.
Baby food with a whole other meaning.
Yeah. And oh God, what was the question? I lost myself.
Burning of witches and knowledge and maybe science.
Oh yeah, I think it's also connected to like the rise of capitalism. Oh God,
A few centuries later.
well, I'm all over the place, I know, but so you had doctors who wanted people to pay them for, you know, when they were sick, doctors wanted you to go to them and to pay them for the work. And you had healers in the village who probably, you know,
Worked for eggs.
worked for something else. And I think they wanted to remove the competition a lot of the times.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to mention like a recent example in pop culture of a TV show where Witches in Salem, which is I think the most familiar like for people who watch a lot of American TV and read a lot of American fiction. So the burning in Salem never happened. Instead, the witches took power and became an army.
So it's like alternate history.
Yeah, it's alternate history, except it's taking place now, and it's called this TV show is called Motherland.
Fort Salem.
Motherland, Fort Salem. It's a recommendation. I wouldn't mention it otherwise. So the witches took control and became like a huge army force.
They literally make up the army of USA, and it's implied that America wouldn't win in a lot of wars if they didn't have witches on their side. But also, even though it's a great, really, especially with sisterhood and bonds between girls and, gay main character, and they really have it all. They still have a witch bitch in leadership. So you can't have it all.
I mean, I guess if you want to be a leader, you have to be a bitch on some level. So I'll take it.
Definitely,
I just remembered researching the Salem trials a while back because I had a storytelling gig about the Salem witch trials. Actually, they weren't burnings; they were hangings in America, right? But what I found interesting was this one character, and I think she appears in some of the TV series about Salem, witch trials. Tituba or Taituba, not sure how to pronounce her. So I thought she was such an interesting character because when they accused her of being a witch, and she was a slave, so she was from the Caribbean, I think, Caribbean. So she figured out the only way to survive was to admit that she really was a witch, because if you admitted, they couldn't hang you. So not only did she acknowledge that she was a witch, but she went on to describe all the things that she did as a witch. So to this day, there exist, these long lists and descriptions of what Tituba claimed to have done as a witch. People that she turned into animals, and the way she met the devil, and all the different potions that she prepared. And then she went on to list all the people and all the women that were in this with her. And they not only did they believe her, they wrote it down like word for word. I guess it was, fiction.
Well, it happened often.
Like fantasy figure, like fiction literature right there before your eyes. They just swallowed it like hook, line, and sinker, sent her to a jail for a while, and then someone, and to this day we don't know who, paid for her to get free, and she got lost somewhere, in the expanses of the American West, and she actually survived, by telling stories.
Yeah, like Scheherazade.
Yeah.
So storytelling is a
Survival skill.
What did you want to say?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say that under torture, a lot of people confessed, and
to a lot of things.
What I find interesting is that we often read about these Salem trials and trials in other countries, but you can also find these kinds of records from the Zagreb witch burnings, and you can really read like word from word what they were saying and what kind of ointments they used to put on their brooms and stuff like that. I was just reading up on that the other day. It was super interesting.
Oh, under armpits also.
Oh yeah, that's an old thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because to make you fly, or what was it?
Hallucinate.
But if I can, just to get back to like witches and words, because obviously witches use a lot of incantations and magic spells to work their witchcraft. So I was really delighted, to be honest, when I found out there was a recent book in English called The Literary Witches, which kind of covers the main female authors all the way from Sappho to the modern ages, and then discusses in which way they were witches or how they use their words to change history. And I really thought that it's a delightful book. I'd love to read it. I haven't read it. I just saw some descriptions of it, and I thought it was a brilliant idea and a brilliant new way to talk about witches also.
So we are entering the final 10 minutes of the panel.
Okay.
I'm going to send out another invitation to send us questions in the Discord for Turrican 1. We're going to try to answer as many as we can. But in the meantime, I would like to know maybe some of your favorite bitches who weren't witches in pop culture or in literature.
I need a moment.
Okay, I think I mentioned this while you think. I mentioned this while we were discussing about this panel in advance, how I really found it interesting that there is what is going on in real life, or has been going on in real life recently, that we see these ideas of princesses being cast aside for witches or bitches or women who are perceived as such. And then so some of my examples here were the triangle with Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and Jennifer Aniston, for example. However that ended. But for a while, it really was, like the nice blonde princess was not the favorite one, or the one with Lady Diana and Camilla Parker Bowles and Prince Charles. So, I find, to be honest, these kind of bitches and narratives really interesting and really fun. And I'm really looking forward to some new archetypes being built out of this.
Yeah. Well, so ever since Game of Thrones kind of broke my heart, I don't really like to talk about it. But still, this thing that came to my mind when you asked the question like this, Cersei. Well, I mean, it's. I started reading A Song of Ice and Fire when I was like 14, so really, it will probably stay as one of the most important books that I read while I was growing up. So it's not really that surprising. But Cersei, I loved really her villainousness in that book. How she had. The way she used her powers and her situation, which was really crappy, but also she was always sort of really, really problematic, even as a child. So it's not like the world turned her into a monster, but that system played a big role in the way she ended up in the end. So I really loved how that society shaped her into a monster that they fear in the end, with all baby switching, like bastards was shown as the rulers and stuff like that. I really liked the way she used her position to do that.
What I loved about Cersei in fandom was that a lot of female identifying cosplayers cosplayed as Cersei. There was a time in Croatia, in every convention you could also run into Cersei, and at least one of them was really scary, and she was really awesome. So I think she was one of the highest profile bitches in fandom for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But also Queen Regina, you know, I liked Once Upon a Time too. As
Yes,
a
she was
fairytale
also,
fan.
wasn't she like a good character, like a good person, playing for the good guys later.
Well, later,
Yeah.
yeah. She wasn't supposed to be that in the first season, or maybe even in the second season, but she was such a compelling character, and Lana Parrilla played her so well that it was just simply hard for audience not to feel for her, even when the show maybe didn't want you to feel for her. So especially in first season, when everything was about Henry getting to his biological mother, because adoptive
mothers are a problem.
Yeah. So but even then it was very easy to feel for her, even when they wanted her to be at the most villainous. So but later on she became quite popular, so she was one of the good guys. But she was one of the most popular characters, and I liked her very much. So she's another bitch character that I love.
I just want to take a moment to share some feelings about the Greek myths. Again, we're going back there, but there's some really excellent witches in there. You have Medusa, you have the sirens, you have Circe, and they're all really bitchy, but really amazing.
So we're off now. Thank you so much for joining us. And if people want to reach you, where can they do that?
If the people want to
reach you, to contact you, to talk about witches or bitches with you.
I don't know. You can ask questions in Discord.
Okay, so we're going to chat around a little bit with you later in Discord. Thank you so much for joining, and sorry for the abrupt, and we like to talk.
This was really fun.
Yeah. See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.